Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back with another great commentary. So, good first weekend of the NFL playoffs. Um, but I don't really have anything to say about the games. I think they were all self-explanatory. I don't think we really learned too much. Uh, I'm more interested in next week. So, my two least favorite. My favorite team is the Chiefs, and I was a fan of them before Mahomes came, just because I like Andy Reid. Other than that, when Reid leaves, I won't be a Chiefs fan anymore. I'll just be just a generic fan. My two least favorite teams are the Lions and the Eagles. The Lions, I don't know. I historically haven't disliked the Lions. Like, I live here in Detroit, so I guess there's like a mild dislike just because everybody else here roots for them, and I'm a hater. But I don't like them because I don't like Dan Campbell, and I'm sure he's a nice guy. I think he's done a phenomenal job as a coach. Something about him rubs me the wrong way. Also, I just have always really disliked former players being coaches. I don't know why, but that's always bothered me. Now, even when I was a kid in the '90s, there were former players who were coaches, but I guess it didn't really bug me because, first of all, it was much less common than it is now. Secondly, um, I had never known them as players. To me, they were like, they had been players in the past, but I was either too young or wasn't even born yet. So I just knew them as, as coaches. And I never thought of them that way. It's weird to see guys who I remember as players being coaches. That bothers me for some reason. Um, One moment. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, the but yeah, my least favorite teams are the Lions for the reasons I just gave, and the Eagles. The Eagles is a little bit different. Like when Dan Campbell or whatever leaves Detroit, I probably wouldn't care about the Lions. I probably won't care. I won't care about the Lions really. But the Eagles, it's different because I find their fan base particularly odious. Now, all NFL fan bases are garbage. I just think that Eagles fans are the worst, and just Philadelphia fans in general. And I know they can be kind of sensitive about their reputation. Like sometimes they're proud of it. They're like, "Yeah, ha, we're assholes," and sometimes they're like, "Oh, actually, no, we're not that much worse than anybody else." I would agree that they're not that much worse than anybody else, but I still think they're worse. Um, the other thing about the Eagles, though, is Nick Sirianni, and I don't think on a personal level he's probably not a bad guy. He's probably no worse. I mean, there's been much worse people who've been NFL coaches. However, you don't have to be bad to be obnoxious. And Nick Sirianni is a real douche. And I don't like him. And not like, again, I'm not against him on a personal level. Like, I hope he has a good life and everything. I don't. I even want him. I even just generally wish him success overall. So it's not like I want to see him fail, but I I don't know. I mean, maybe kind of part of me doesn't want to see him win at all. Um, the or just doesn't like to see him win. But I mean, if he does win, good for him, and good for Eagles fans if they win. So it's nothing like too serious, but those are the teams that I dislike and root against. Of those two, I dislike the Eagles more. So if it comes down to the Eagles versus the Lions, I would be rooting for the Lions. I've said several times that I think the Eagles are the best team in football. I think that is close to being a silent consensus. Like I'm probably the most open. I mean, I'm the most open about saying it over and over. Like I don't think it's like to me they're clearly the best team in football. But I think a lot of people silently think it. Just like the Eagles are, whatever it is, they're just regarded as super good. There's a few super teams in the league: the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, and the Lions. Those are just like those are the super teams, and then you've got everybody else. So, but the thing, and like the Eagles, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but they're a real throwback to the '90s Cowboys teams. Which is just you just over like just gigantic, physically dominant offensive lines, great power running games. The Cowboys were rushing attack was led by Emmitt Smith, and the Eagles rushing attack is led by Saquon Barkley, who seems to actually be even better than Emmitt Smith was. Then they got a big, powerful receiver on the outside. The Cowboys had Michael Irving, and the Eagles have A.J. Brown, who seems to be better than Michael Irving was. Then as for the quarterbacks, they're good quarterbacks who aren't like necessarily great. I know that Aikman is often considered great, and maybe he is. I don't really remember him that well. But I mean, some people would say Hurts is great, and I don't see that. So to me, like, I mean, obviously the longevity and accomplishments of Aikman are a lot better than Hurts's are right now. But I would see them pretty comparable as quarterbacks. Like, if you ask me, like, overall, like, which one's better, prime for prime, I'd say Aikman, but I don't know. Hurts is okay. Hurts is good. He's not great, but he's good. He's not Mahomes. He's not Allen. But he is a good quarterback. It can be tough to it's tough to judge Aikman because he was in greenhouse conditions. He had that power running game, that great offensive line, a great defense, which does help a quarterback, not have to force things. And, he was in a place where, he could run the ball and do play action and make a lot of big plays down the field with Michael Irvin and some of the other great players they had. And that's kind of like it is with Hurts. Like, yeah, Hurts has done really well, but I think a lot of quarterbacks would have done well in Hurts' setup. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Jalen Hurts. I made a video last year or before the season started saying Eagles fans continue to overrate Jalen Hurts. And, I feel like that video has mostly been proven wrong. I said, like, this guy, he's not that good. I didn't think he was bad, but I thought, like, I was saying stuff like Purdy is clearly better. CJ Stroud is clearly better. And I don't stand by either of those things at all. I mean, last year, I think that they were correct, but this year, Hurts has made me eat my words. So again, good for the Eagles, good for Hurts, good for Nick Sirianni. Now, I was right. I made another video saying that the Eagles were right to not fire Nick Sirianni, which at the time was a very controversial decision. Most people thought Sirianni should be fired, and I made a video outlining why I thought the Eagles were correct to keep Sirianni on. I think that's been proven to be completely right. So, I mean, obviously I'm not much of a prognosticator, but I don't get everything wrong. I do get some right. And that's what we're here to talk about now. Because on paper, I mean, I don't see, like, if anybody was going to beat the Eagles, it would have to be the Lions, the Bills, or the Chiefs. And you might say, well, the Ravens, but I don't think the Ravens are that good. And the Eagles absolutely crushed the Ravens in the Ravens' own house during the season. Now, regular season and postseason are different, but I think the Eagles are better than the Ravens. So you think it'd have to be one of those elite teams. Well, next week they're likely going to be playing the Vikings. Now, you don't need astrology to know that the Vikings are probably going to win tonight against the Lambs, because the Rams suck. They're bad. They stink. And the Eagles win against the Packers. I mean, the Eagles looked great. They did the job. It was a very workmanlike, if dominant win. And but the Packers stink. The Packers stink. And like I was saying that before, like they've gotten like some level of respect as like being this an okay team. No, they're not. They suck. The Packers are terrible. So, I mean, good for the Eagles, but the Packers suck. And the Lambs, the same thing. They suck. They're worse than the Packers. They're really bad. So, I would. And the Vikings are. I don't think that they're great, but they're a good team. So it should be no problem at all for the Vikings. Having said that, I did cast the chart for it, assuming a kickoff time of 8:16. Now, it may not be 8:16, it may be 8:11 or 8:12, and I forget what it said if I did it there. But it looks like a Vikings win. And then if the Vikings don't win, if the Rams win, you don't have to cast a chart for the Eagles versus the Rams because obviously the Eagles are going to win that game. I don't care what any chart says. But anyway, you said so if you have this situation where it's the Vikings coming to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, you'd have to go with the Eagles, right? I mean, the Vikings are okay, but the Eagles are they're an elite team. The Vikings aren't. Eagles will be playing at home. The Eagles are just in their element. I mean, I know they were maybe a little, they were a little bit out of sync against Green Bay, but they still got a dominant win. And they're going to be, in sync, for Green Bay. I mean, for the Vikings game. So you've got to pick the Eagles. You'd think that. And so the game kicks off at 3:12. So it's supposed to start at 3, which is obviously not going to happen. So they'll do the Star Spangled Banner. And based on what it's been like this last weekend, I would guess the game would kick off at around 3:11 or 3:12. So that's in Philadelphia. I cast a chart for it. I think we can safely assume that the Eagles will be the favorite because when you're doing an event chart, now, not everybody does it this way, but most people, at least as far as I know, who do sports astrology do it this way. Certainly the way I do it. Favorite gets the first house, underdog gets the 7th house. Now, there are other ways to do it. Some people say the home team gets the first house and the away team gets the 7th house, which in this case would be the same thing. Some teams go by teams' colors, by the colors teams wear. So the Eagles would be, since they're green, they're going to get Mercury. The Vikings are purple, so they're going to get, I guess, Venus. But I don't know. I don't do it that way. So I don't know. Okay. So for the chart that I cast, and you can go to AstroSeek and make the chart yourself if you want. 3:12 Philadelphia on the 19th. I don't know, whatever day Sunday is. I would say that over 90% of people who do event charts for sports astrology would say that's a clear Eagles win. They would read the chart that way because the Viking signifier in that chart is Saturn, which is right inside the midheaven. So the midheaven, inside the midheaven, if it's if it's way inside, it doesn't matter. But if it's within 2 degrees inside of the midheaven, the other team's the underdog signifier, that means the favorite is in control of the underdog. Favorite has power over the underdog. The favorite wins. And now the other way around, if it was just 1 degree outside the midheaven, that would mean that Saturn, the underdog, has power over the favorite. The underdog wins. So I think that's like I said, over 90% of people would say that's a clear Eagles win. However, after, extensive practice, astrological practice, I just don't think that necessarily holds true. All things being equal, I agree that works. But not all things are always equal. And in this case, I know you guys got to bear with me for the Astro speak here, but part of fortune, also known as Fortuna, that belongs to the favorite, the Eagles. Saturn is in conjunction with that. Now, it is not an applying conjunction. It's already passed. And that's why I think that, again, most people who do astrology, because most people who do, I can't speak for people who do Vedic astrology for event charts, but most people are influenced or do the Frawley method. And the Frawley method would say, the conjunction it's not applying, it's not relevant. There may be something to that, generally speaking. I'm not sure that's true when it's it's just passed, and it's a Saturn, which is slow as fuck. Saturn moves very slowly, so it's not like it's really going to change during the game or anything. And it's on Fortuna, which is so even if Saturn didn't belong to the underdog, it's such a negative star. It's like a negative star of death, right on Fortuna, even if it's passed, I see that as a loss. I think the Eagles are going to lose. I think the Eagles are going to lose. Actually, let me go back on that. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose. I think that the way I interpret the chart says that the Eagles are going to lose. How it shakes out, I don't know. So I'm in a situation where if we win, I could say, hey, look, the chart was right. But if I'm wrong, I'm gonna say like, hey, look, I didn't think the Eagles were going to lose. I just told you what the chart said. So I guess that can be like a cop out, but I'm willing to always own up to predictions that I get wrong. I get stuff wrong all the time. But sometimes I'm really not making a prediction. Sometimes I'm just saying what the chart says. And then for the, again, the criticism would be, again, well, your sports astrology predictions are terrible. You're wrong all the time. Yes, I know. I'm very bad at it. I agree. However, don't sleep on me, because yesterday I hit 7 out of 9. And at least one of those, I think a couple of those were pretty big upsets. And the two that I lost were the Nets versus whoever they were playing. They lost by 1 point in overtime. The Nets were a slight underdog. They lost by 1 point in overtime. So I'm not saying that counts as a win, but it is a mitigating circumstance. The other loss I had was the Phoenix Suns, who lost pretty decisive. No, not the Phoenix Suns. Whoever the Phoenix Suns were playing, the Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets. They lost pretty decisively to the Phoenix Suns, and they were they were like a plus 200 underdog, but they were winning the game. They had the game won until just the late fourth quarter collapse. Now, again, still a loss, and it wasn't even a close loss. I don't think they even covered the spread, but I don't know. I got seven of the other ones right. And speaking of that, so how about some stuff in advance for tonight? If I can remember them all. Obviously, I got the Vikings. Again, I'm just assuming the game starts at 8:16. If the game starts at 8:12, maybe it's different. I don't remember. I don't really care. I don't really care what the chart says, because I think that the Rams suck. So yeah, but at 8:16 says the Vikings win. So I got the Vikings, but who else did I had? I also had the Knicks, who are a big favorite, so not much there. But then I have a big upset, the Wizards versus whoever they're playing. The Wizards are supposed to get crushed, and I have them winning. Then I have the Raptors are supposed to lose, and I have them winning. So that's 2 upsets. Everybody else is the favorite, though. It's so Vikings, Knicks, Wizards, Raptors, Panthers, Flames, and I think that's it. So I think that's like it's a $10 parlay. If it wins, I get like $1,500 or something. I forget. We'll see. That's all for now. But anyway, we'll see how those games. So did you just remember those games, and then you can check tomorrow to see how I did. Vikings, Wizards, Panthers, Knicks, Raptors, Vikings, Wizards, Panthers. Oh, Flames, Wizards, Raptors. There you go. 6 games. See how it says 6 games, 2 upsets. Let's see how I do. That's all for now. See you in the next. Go Vikings. Let's crush these faggot Rams.